Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the committee day meeting of the Tennessee Fish and Wildlife Commission. I'm the chairman of the commission, Jim Ripley. We're at the Lanham Center in Dyersburg, Tennessee on the coldest day I think I've ever duck hunted. But we're glad that y'all are here. We have with us some guests, Clarence and Laura Dyes with the Tennessee Fur Harvesters Association. Come all the way over here. Where are y'all? Most loyal attendees we've got. We appreciate you very much. We've got some students from UT Martin, and I'm told that they are biopolitics students. Is that correct? Okay, and they are, let's see, Logan Wilburn. All right, Logan. Elizabeth Medlock, Rebecca Rangel, Audrey Grimes. All right. Well, welcome. We're very pleased to have you today. We have also David Blackwood with the West Tennessee River Basin Authority. Where are you, David? All right. We've got two Tennessee Tech students here. Ellie Lane. Where's Ellie? Hey, Ellie. And Nick Masto. Did I pronounce that correctly? Okay, good deal. And also Brad Cohen. Hey, Brad. And then we have a visitor from Dixon, Brad Carrier. Where are you, Brad? Yes, sir. All right. Well, good deal. I'd ask everybody to silence their cell phones at this time. And I'm going to ask Betsy to, or Mary, whoever's going to do the roll call, to please do the roll call.
Tommy Woods.
Here.
Angie Box. Here. Monty Blue.
Here.
Stan Butt.
Here.
Wally Childress.
Here.
Bill Cox.
Here.
Chris Devaney.
Here.
Jimmy Granberry.
Here.
Steve Jones.
Here.
Brian McLaren.
Here.
Kent Woods.
Here.
Hank Wright.
Here.
Jim Ripley.
Here.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Mary. I also want to recognize a special guest here, Representative Ron Gann, and I'd like Bill Cox to welcome Ron.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Gant represents an area down there in my district, Fayette and Hardeman County area, and he is I've known Ron and his father for years, and he's doing a fabulous job as a Reagan conservative in the legislature, and he's a friend of the agency and the commission. He travels all over his district and basically the state, doing good things. And Ron, if you'd like to say a few words like a politician normally does, you've got the floor. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Chairman. I was a little bit concerned when you said Bill Cox was going to introduce me or recognize me, because I've known him an awful long time. He knows a lot about me. So, but no, thank you for letting me be here. And I think we've got some other reps that are coming later. So, but I wanted to extend my thank you to what all of y'all do. I know this is a thankless job sometimes that y'all take on, and a lot of long hours that you spend pouring through different ideas and things that deal with our wildlife. And I want to thank you for the initiative that we all have worked together on with the Bill Dance Signature Lake program. That has been a long time coming, and a lot of hands in the pot to make that happen, including our governor. So I want to thank you for that and your efforts in that. And Bobby, I know, has been very involved in that, and Chris Richardson. And we've got a very good team, and I'm very proud of the work that we're accomplishing. And I know that things don't get accomplished as fast as we like to see them, but I guess that's government, and that's just the way it's going to be. But anyway, thank you for letting me be here, and I'm always here to be a big supporter of you guys and anything I can do to help. And also, let me mention Hank. I can't pass up an opportunity. Hank is one that I pushed, and along with Bill, to be on the board. Very very much. And I know that he is very dedicated and does a great job for us both of them do a very great job for us down in Southwest Tennessee. I'm grateful for their friendship, but obviously the work they do for us as well. But again, thank you for letting me be here.
Thank you, Representative Gant. We appreciate you being here. Okay, at this point, I'll recognize Executive Director Bobby Wilson for his report.
Thank you, Chairman Ripley. So just a brief update about a few things that I've been involved with since the last commission meeting. Just for everybody's benefit and knowledge, is the State Lands Working Group it's mostly the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation or the state parks, and of course the Department of Agriculture with the Forestry Division. And we have been meeting for a while to see if there are ways that we can work together more to do things collaboratively. And we met one time, and Chris is on that as well as on that group. So we met once since the last commission meeting. Also, the Rural Outdoors Task Force, Governor's Task Force, on trying to look at ways that they can improve outdoor activities and outdoor attention to various counties, especially those that are economically distressed. They just yesterday, the group minus Chris and I went to Clay County, Commissioner McLaren's home county. He couldn't be there either, and we couldn't either. So, but we had some representatives there from Tennessee Wildlife that were there. And I haven't heard what the results were, but I'm sure it was a good visit. Continue to meet with Commissioners Hatcher and from Agriculture and David Salyers from TDEC, as well as Jim Bryson from the state parks. I was able to sit in on a virtual meeting about the bioacoustic fish fence that's at Barkley, a lock about trying to keep the Asian carp out of Lake Barkley from the Ohio River. And it was very interesting. I'm not going to give you the details on that. Maybe Frank Fiss will do that at some point in time in the future, but it's very encouraging, at least I can say that much. I attended the Archery Trade Association in Louisville, Kentucky a couple weeks ago. I was on a panel of other directors to discuss to anybody that want to listen to it about ways that our agency and other agencies are trying to keep the hunters that came on board and hunters and fishermen from the COVID time and the pandemic. And we're trying to see if there's what is everybody doing to try to keep those people in the fold so we don't lose them. So it was a very good discussion topic there. I'm going to the Recreation Boating and Fishing Foundation board meeting next week. And it's our annual meeting at no cost to the agency or to the state. So I thought I'd throw that out there so everybody won't think I'm taking a vacation. And just to mention that we have some folks that are either retired recently or going to retire by the end of this month and soon after that. And that's a Major Mitch Bailey in Region 2, Mike Murdoch, who was a wildlife officer for a long time in Robertson County, and he transferred over to be the habitat protection biologist. Jim Hooper, I believe, is lieutenant there in Wilson County area. Carol Whited in the DOA in our human resources. And also Danny Stone. Many of you may know Danny. He's a Creel clerk at Del Hollow Lake, and he's going to be retiring here real soon too, as well as Mike Smith, who is the hatchery manager at Eagle Bend. And probably some of you may remember Tim Cleveland. He was a regional manager from Region 2. He's retired as of 2 days ago. So get a chance to know them. You might want to reach out to them and tell them congratulations on a great career. And the only thing I'm left to say is that the next meeting we'll be in Nashville, and you may mention that too, Mr. Chairman, later, but we'll be talking about the election of new officers and a few other topics that we'll be bringing up at that point. Like waterfowl proclamation too, I believe. Yep, waterfowl proclamation too. Seasons. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. So today we're at committee day, which means we meet in committees, and the first committee work will be that of the Wildlife Committee, and I recognize Chairman Jimmy Granberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome everybody to Wildlife Committee. And at this point, I'd like to ask Wildlife Region 1 Program Manager Patrick Lemons to the podium to introduce our first speaker and great partner for the TWRA.
Hey, good afternoon, Commission. Dyer County's been my home for 15 years, and it's a great place to live, and I'm glad you're here. Something I've learned working this agency is how important our partners are. With a good partner, there's a multiplying effect. It tremendously enhances the work we do. And a lot of the folks we work with are household names: U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, TVA, Ducks Unlimited. But there's another partner in West Tennessee that we work closely with for several years, and that's the West Tennessee River Basin Authority. Over the last decade, they completed major wetland restorations on several areas, whether that's Taggart, Stokes Creek, West Sandy, and then their most recent project is at White Oak Creek. And today, their executive director, David Blackwood, is here to talk about that project.
There we go. Hey, how is everybody? I'm David Blackwood, Executive Director of the West Tennessee River Basin Authority. And before I get started, through TWRA, thank you to the Commission for all the projects y'all allow us to do together and work together and do great things like what we've done out here at White Oak. This is the hydrologic restoration of the White Oak WMA. Our territory, for those of you who are not from West Tennessee, the West Tennessee River Basin Authority starts at the Tennessee River and goes west to the Mississippi and includes everything except for the Memphis, Shelby County, and the upper part of the Wolf in Fayette County. But everything else is in our purview, and we're charged with flow and function of the rivers and streams and the wetlands of West Tennessee, and make sure they stay open, they stay free of log jams, and restoring where we can natural habitat, floodplain dynamics. So we intersect TWRA mission a pretty good bit. To know on this map is that yellow is sand. Everything west of that green area, that's sand. There's no bedrock, there's no dams, there's no TVA controlling our bottom elevation. We're kind of on our own, and that creates a lot of problems in West Tennessee and makes us a little different, so we manage things differently. But where we're talking about today is where this star is, where the green meets the purple, and that is the White Oak WMA in Hardin County. And this is the White Oak watershed. It's about 160 square miles in total, and the WMA, I think, is about 7,000 acres, or somewhere around 7% of the entire watershed, right at the outlet of White Oak Creek. So this area has a history to it, and there's a reason that there's some problems. And it starts with geology and the fact that everything used to slope west, right? Well, we have a divide between the Tennessee River and the Mississippi River where things have been up, and giving us things like Reelfoot Lake and the plateau, and where it's doing that along that green to yellow interface there, everything's sloping back to the east. So things that used to flow west over geologic time have been turned east. What that does is make a really, really flat zone right around in here. I guess my pointer's working. Oh, there we go. Right around in here where it meets the river. So we have a lot of stuff coming down the hill, and it hits a really flat spot adjacent to the formula for problems, all on its own. But we've also done some things in the watershed over time that have caused problems as well. And it started with early settlement. We did a lot of tree clearing, and we knew that this area had drainage, mud. This is the crew that did it. And this is the house they lived in while they did it, and they pulled it up the swamp with them as they went, and they would cut trees and feed the steam engines that ran these things, and people would bring them wood as their payment for coming through and putting in the drainage system. Kind of interesting, but that dirt pile that's still there. This is a swamp. Things are not moving here. And while that was going on in the bottoms, this was going on in the headwaters. This is in the 30s. There's a lot of land clearing. There's a lot of heavy erosion because we're learning we don't have bedrock. We don't have things that keep things stable. So a lot of sand moving down the hill. This is a quad map from 1934. So you can see the channelization was already there. A lot of that green, we had a lot of wetland there. We had a lot of swamp areas that already show up. And this outline is the rough property boundary of the WMA. It's a little different today, but that's roughly it. So you can see it exists in the low area. Anytime I look at a map and I see parallel channels in the same valley, I know we got drainage issues. This is where that equipment was sitting and piling mud and had like an 8-foot berm of mud beside it. This is it today. This is sediment that came down from the hills, filled the canals, and this is what's left of the original channelization. And are canals that filled up with sand and are no longer operating, and they got abandoned, start causing adjacent landowner issues and just really a headache for everybody in managing water. They start collecting water, they start flooding, they can't get out. It's not using the natural drainage properly. So even your flooded areas are not performing as they should for wetlands and for floodplains. You just got a lot of trapped water. It's not good for a whole lot. And it's really hard to get into and see what's going on. So when we started working with TWRA to talk about, well, how can this be better? What's actually wrong? You know, we need to get in and look at it. We couldn't see it. So we hopped in some kayaks and tried to go that way. And we learned you can't see much that way either. That was a long, hard row through a bunch of blocked up canals and mud and thousands of acres of dead timber, a lot of beaver dams. But it ended up being a nice float through the way. And we learned a lot about it. And what we learned was we need better data. And we need a better way to get it. It just so happened they were flying the state LIDAR contract at the time, and we were able to select this watershed and have this flown using a plane, and they use a laser that takes 200,000 to 400,000 points per second and filters out vegetation, filters out everything, gives you bare earth. The only thing it can't see through is water. So this was done when water was relatively low as it could get. And that really gave us the insight to figure out what's going on in a situation like this, because this is a unique project, but in West Tennessee, it's not a unique problem. We have several areas that we have drainage issues like this. And one of the things we found out is in many cases, I don't expect you guys to zoom in and know too much about what's going on here, except to note this. This is a cross-section across the valley. In the center part, that high area is the canal that they dug. The bottom of the canal is higher than the floodplain on either side by 2 to 3 feet. So that is not a recipe for good drainage. That is not going to help you with flooding. And it causes a lot of talk about it in a minute, but that was pretty much the story across the whole WMA was, you know, we have these places where there's the canal bottom, there's your floodplain. There's your canal bottom, there's your floodplain. Never good. And it also gave us detailed looks like this where we could see the old canal system had been breached. The water is trying to move south. It's eroded through all these berms, all these levees, and we can see how it's distributing sands, distributing sediment. We're not stopping any flooding with our canal system. We're just causing dysfunction. And so we flew an aerial to kind of match that up and truth it and see where of trees and where, when floods come through, this is Middleton Creek, they would jump out and they would sweep through dead trees every flood, and they would carry them back to the canal. So after every flood, we were helping with maintenance to go try to remove these massive piles of dead trees and this continuous maintenance. And where that's a real problem is this is a WMA and you can't get to any part of it for hunting, for ducks, for, you know, deer, turkey, anything. It's a huge property and you can't really use it. And we have areas, and it's about a mile wide. Well, when you get down to the Tennessee River, 6 miles away, it goes under one bridge, and it's about 100 feet wide, and it's about 14 feet deep. And we put some stream gauging in, try to figure out what's going on, and the floods that came into White Oak didn't really show a response at the Tennessee River. It's controlled by the river. So we know in this area, in the WMA area, lies the solution to the flood problems we're seeing. Another thing we noticed on site, this is the downstream most area. This is Sulphur Wells Road. There are 2 bridges on it. One is a small bridge that carried most of the floodplain flow. One was a large bridge that carried very little of the flow, just because everything had changed and had abandoned its canals. So we did a lot of stream gauging, did a lot of looking at how storms come through, and really trying to get a grip on how do you design around something like this that's adjacent to the backwater of the Tennessee River. It's a huge drainage area. It's a huge project. And you have a very narrow window to work in. So while this is a busy graph too, this is the Tennessee River water levels. This is a record flood at Savannah 401s from the 1800s. This on the left is all the controlling elevations around the boundary of the WMA. So right here, standing at the White Oak Outlet, in this huge, basically wetland lake, to how we're going to manage water in, how we're going to manage water out, how it can affect floods, which is not a big window to work with. So we have high confined sediment loads from channelization upstream. We have no access. Canals that are higher than floodplain, primary outlet's wrong, and it's flat for 6 miles. It drops, I think, 1 foot in 6 miles between the outlet of the WMA and the river. But I like a good challenge. I said, sure, I think I can design around that. So we got our goals for restoration to restore the natural habitat, restore the floodplain, restore the natural function of all the channels, increase accessibility, and to protect existing wetland, because there's a lot of existing wetland habitat out there that you don't want to go away. And how would we go about doing that? It's abandoning the canal system. It's looking at a flood wave, how that comes into the property and leaves the property. How something floods is as important as if it floods. And putting in water crossings and boat ramps for accessibility and strategically controlling the water. So that's what we set out to do. We broke out our crayons and drew a nice master plan there. And then we got to work. So our primary outlet structure, we have to treat White Oak WMA as a lake, as a very shallow lake. And I mentioned that 4-foot window we had to manage water. The way we did that was with the primary structure is a labyrinth weir. That means for a very little rise, we get a lot of water movement through. So we could protect the wetland, but as soon as we start getting floods in, we can move water out quickly, protect adjacent landowners. And we built that with sheet piles and a Traco mounted attachment that was cool. And if any of you get out and are building with this, aluminum levels warp in the sun. That made this man very frustrated. Just if y'all are taking notes. And then we use our amphibious Traco to build the infrastructure coming up to it. And this is what it looked like right after we finished. And as we restore flows and we expect sediment to start moving in the channel to downcut, this will provide grade control. Everything to the right will be about 2 feet lower. Everything to the left will be maintained where it was. So we have several hundred acres of open water that will be maintained. And then for our access, we put in a maintenance bridge across this structure, and it's angled in such a way that when it's 3 feet deep, it's flooding, the structure is no longer used, and the flood goes down the floodplain. So it's a really unique design. And with the primary structure, we had a backup. You remember I showed the 2 bridges where one was big, one was small. The primary structure takes everything to the big bridge. The secondary, when you get to a certain flood area, diverts some water to the smaller bridge. Here's that structure in place. And then we had to set about tackling how do we reconstruct the meander. So if we're going to take canals and take 54,000 feet of linear feet of channel, put back into a meandering system, that's one of the biggest I'm aware of in West Tennessee, maybe in Tennessee, total in one project. But we went through some of the original channel locations, and where we would have dead timber, we would pull it down, we'd lay it down along the channel, then we would excavate what we needed for the channel to give it its flow capacity, and then revegetate that. Again, using the amphibious track hoe, because that's about all you can use out there. And these guys were out there for almost 2 years. And this is a day we weren't working. That water's brown because there are a lot of beaver out there. And we had some guidance from some old meander scars. This is not one we dug. This is just adjacent to the project. Here's us digging the new Hurricane Creek and connecting everything up and getting water to flow in the low points where it wants to flow. And we have the Lebanon Pond control storage area for waterfowl management. This is just a drop board structure with a highly sophisticated beaver control mechanism and a very, very talented technician cleaning it there. So we had the issue of what to do with the canals. Now that the canals were abandoned, as soon as we reconnected meanders, they all went dry. They became our roads. Bridge access across there. This bridge is about 1.5 miles from any road, very difficult to get to. But we found an innovative foundation system and a modular bridge that allowed us to get in and get that bridge. So now you can drive through the middle of the WMA from one end to the other. And this is a huge step up for safety, for accessibility, for hunting. And this is what it looks like now that it's finished. You see tributary channels have been connected through. Orange line shows you where you have drivable access through the WMA. And then we have the triangle areas. We installed new concrete boat ramps. So we increased boating through there, and we monumented everything. So we can come back and survey and see how it's doing. And also as part of our monitoring program, we put in stream gauge stations at all the upstream receiving channels. So we could see when we did this work, how did that affect that? Because a lot of times we get the idea that if we restore meander away from a canal, that we're going to make flooding worse. We're going to raise water levels. And counterintuitively, this is not the case. And in fact, in 2 years, we've shown in this incoming stream, the bottom has dropped 4 inches. We have more flow into the WMA, more processing of sediment, more of debris. This is at Highway 22. We have a 6-inch drop in what the bottom of the channel is. When you get a system functioning the way it's intended to function, it moves things better. And that's what we're seeing here. The record flood of 2019 on the Tennessee River actually got this station. It put the whole project about 20 feet underwater. And that one did not get replaced. A deer rifle got this station. It has since been replaced, but that is a hazard of monitoring. Sometimes they become a target. And then we went back and we flew LiDAR again. And I want to keep mentioning this LiDAR for these big spaces where we have, things we need to know that are on sensitive scales. And you can see between 2017 in the orange and 2021 in the blue, that's the water level, that's base level. That's what we dropped off of the floodplain that was obstructed, that was stagnant water, that is now down. And that volume is roughly the same volume of something like the flood that went through Waverly. This is a significant amount of water that we restored the storage on the floodplain, and we preserved all the wetland habitat. It's just a big win. And we've noticed a difference from the adjacent property owners. We've had really good this year, really, some of the dry had. And when they get a big rain, it moves through and it's processed quickly. And then this is our original kayak trip in 2017 of January. And then this is 2021 over here on the right. And, I want to point out some of these trees that are greening up and starting to really come along. Getting that water off, giving it a seasonal dry time allows that habitat to emerge and allows those trees to catch up and is really better habitat as we go forward. There's our abandoned canal right after. You see 2 feet water dropped. And these are the roads we made out of our canals. And here's our boat ramp on the west side. This is the Jones Run boat ramp. And, for a minute, I couldn't tell if you turn that picture upside down, it might look just about the same. That's some really pretty water. So, I feel like a lot of this project has been a big success. I think they're seeing that at the WMA level on just use and accessibility. This is an accessible kayak launch we put in on the eastern end on the boat ramp. And it's my hope that we see more people using the fishing and starting to do some recreational kayaking out here, because now it is a good float. We don't have a lot of blockages to go through. So these are just some interesting pictures from construction. And I don't know if you guys can see him, but this is a crawdad. He's got his hands up and he's warning me, and they are all in this flooded forest. And this is habitat that we were able to maintain and that is functioning now. And this is part of what we're protecting out there, food sources. And these are the real heroes of the story, the amphibious traco and the airboat. And these are the interlopers who just come to look at what's going on. And when we have things like this, the keys to the success on this is going to be maintenance of effort. It's going to be staying after the beaver here. Debris removal is way down from where it was. And this has been in a couple years now. Beaver management, a lot easier. Not solved, because you ain't gonna solve beaver, but staying on frequent inspections and just keeping up with it. And there's a lot of areas like this that will benefit. So, thank you guys once again for your support on these kind of projects. And we hope that there's more we can work on in the future to really set an example that the natural systems do have mechanisms to take care of themselves and to do good things. So everybody should be really proud of this one.
Thank you, David. I appreciate the story. Well, I'm sure some commissioners have some questions. I had a couple real quick. What was your total budget from 17 to 21, and what type of fish and fish management are you doing in the newly created waterways?
So the budget was $3 million for this project, and it included some cost match that was property purchase could be used as cost match. The construction budget with the amphibious traco was a little over $2 million, and we came in right at or under budget, which rarely happens. Yeah, we had some meetings about, well, what else do we need to do? Like, can we spend it? It went really well. We had a really great contractor. Yeah, so it was about the $3 million. And then for monitoring and maintenance, we have the stream gauges that we're doing out there. And UT Martin is actually engaged with us on a fish study where we look at before and after fish populations and reproductive guilds. And we've been sampling white oak for about 3 years now, above and below, as long as several other creeks in West Tennessee. So that's data that will be ongoing during our monitoring.
Any new fish to the streams?
No,
Stocking?
no, we didn't get in the biological management side of it.
Any other commissioners have any questions? I'm sure Commissioner Cox would like to start down on the end.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. David, isn't this project older? The discussions went on for several years before we got started. Isn't it the impetus for this was the water was backing up on farmland, and these farmers couldn't use it. And that where it's kind of started. Wasn't there a group of them that started talking about this
Yes.
10 years ago?
I think you're talking about the Tennessee Valley Farmers.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, they were having some issues with water coming down and flooding, or when you get a rain, it not getting off them fast enough, and impacting some of their operations. So we have seen dramatic improvements in that, and they were really helpful once we came to the table and talked about what is everybody's objective, what do we need to get done. When we started fleshing out everybody's interest in it, we learned that it's a really doable project. But
I think
yes,
it's
they
amazing
were a
what you've
big,
done. Is there any are there any other drainages that were channelized like that? Could be returned?
90% of West Tennessee, with the exception of the mainstream Hatchie.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So yeah, if y'all have more money, we can do a lot of these.
Say something.
Yeah.
Just want to first thank you for coming and presenting this, and the detail and description of what you've done really helped, and I appreciate your thoroughness. I think I remember the first year on the commission, I believe Dave Sawyers came and initiated the discussion, so I'm glad I got to see the end of it, kind of like a movie, so I appreciate you doing that, and I know you've got a lot of programs coming up, the Wet Center and the upcoming Real Foot project, so I just appreciate all your work you're doing a great job.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Here, David. That's very interesting.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, David. We really appreciate it. Obviously, the proof's in the pudding. Really amazing. Mr. Chairman,
It works.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've noticed a couple more guests that are here that I need to recognize. Representative Chris Todd. How are you, Chris? Good to see you. And Mike Butler with the Tennessee Wildlife Federation is here. Good to see you, Mike. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thanks. Okay, at this time, I'd like to get Jamie Feddersen to come up and introduce our second speaker and partner. And before he does that, he might tell us all about his pintail that he knocked out of the sky this morning, and it's a beautiful, beautiful duck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Yeah, it was a very nice pintail. We saw quite a few of them this morning. It was a good time. I think it's I've shot a few pintails in my life, but this is probably the prettiest one I've shot. So it was very nice. But before we get going, I do want to introduce Dr. Brad Cohen. But first, I'd like to introduce or acknowledge Randy Cook with the Fish and Wildlife Service is here. He's been a great friend to the agency, a good partner, good working relationship. He's out of the Reelfoot National Wildlife Refuge area, so he's been very helpful with a lot of things that go on with the agency up in that part of the state around Reelfoot. So thank you for coming today, Randy. I appreciate that. Okay, so Dr. Brad Cohen from Tennessee Tech University is here. He's going to be talking to you all today, giving you an update on our Mallard Telemetry project, where we're looking at wetland uses, wetland use by mallards across West Tennessee using satellite telemetry. So at this point, Dr. Cohen. Thank you, Jamie. And thank you, Commissioners, for having me today. I wasn't given the before and after. All right, we're ready to go. All right, thanks for having me here today. I'm really excited to be here to give you an update on our project. We're finishing up year 2 and rounding into about a quarter of the way done with year 3. And basically, some of you, the Commissioners, weren't here when I gave the last update. So for some commissioners, this is going to be a little repetitive at first, but for those others, let me just give you a little bit of background on the project and a little bit where this came from. And this project started
at the very beginning with extensive talks with West Tennessee biologists about what type of information they needed to better manage duck habitat, duck populations, and hunter opportunity here in West Tennessee. And those questions kind of centrally focused around where are ducks going, what is it they selecting for, when are they selecting for it, what's influencing their movements and selection. And so to answer those questions, we're going out and capturing mallard ducks, about 120 a year. GPS units is what we're putting on. Now, these GPS units are pretty cool. They have little solar charging batteries on them, and they send us texts of the data. So the duck gives us data when it's in Tennessee, and then it scoots up to Canada, and we still get data. And if a duck dies, we get the unit back and hopefully redeploy it. So if it's a male, female, juvenile, or adult, if we catch it, we tend to put a GPS transmitter on it. Now, what separates this project out from a lot of other projects that use GPS transmitters at all is what we're doing while we're collecting data on where the ducks are going, right? We get about a GPS location once every hour. Concurrently, we're actually doing real-time assessments of duck food on the landscape. So we're going out there and we're surveying all the different types of duck food. And then on top of that, we're going up in a plane because it's not duck food unless there's water for them to eat it. And so we're looking at how water changes on the landscape. So while we collect these locations, we're actually getting real-time data on food availability. All right, so that's going to help us get some good inferences. But on top of that, it's probably not just duck food that matters of where ducks go, but certainly hunting pressure and getting to those resources without getting shot might be important. So while we're up in the plane, duck hunters in Tennessee like to hunt out of these big box blinds. I got bad news for you. They don't camouflage in all that well, even from a plane that's 400 feet up in the sky. And we can very easily mark with the GPS mark where all the blinds are. So we actually get a good estimate of the density of hunting that's happening up and down the river tributaries. But that's not just it. The other thing we can see very clearly is those spinning wing decoys that we like to hunt with. And so when those spinning wing decoys are nice and flashing and running, we kind of know it's being hunted. So we get both the spatial density of hunting pressure and the time it's being hunted. And so now we got the picture, right? Everything that we think can affect the duck, we basically got the data on it. Let me just jump into the data then and what kind of inferences we're drawing so far. We've deployed GPS units on about 450 mallards. 2/3 of those are adults. 50-50 males and females, a little bit more males and females. Of all the ones, surprisingly, of the 450 plus ducks that we've put transmitters on, only about 54 of those ducks have been shot by hunters in Tennessee. So a little of around 10%, give or take. Now, the first big finding. What you're looking at is every single GPS location we have from our 456 ducks from the months of November through February. And the first thing you should notice is there's no Louisiana. There's no, a little bit of Arkansas. First thing that stands out is that these are our ducks. These are Tennessee ducks. They come here. When they get here in November, December, whenever they arrive, they stay here. So there's something they like about this place, and they're not going any further down. Even with the cold pushes we've had right now, even when we had that extreme freeze in February of this previous February, our ducks never pushed down past even just a little bit down to like Alabama. They're staying right here. The other big thing is it's pretty risky to be a duck out here in Tennessee. What you're looking at on that right side is just the spatial distribution of the blinds. Like all those marks are just box blinds that people are hunting out of, And I'll orient you because you're going to see this map a couple other times. The pink, so the way West Tennessee works is it's a river tributary system, right? So Mississippi's, I don't know how to zoom in, but the Mississippi's all the way to your left. And then you get the Obion and the Forked Deer, which you're looking at there. And basically, you have the pink is public land, so these are publicly huntable lands, and then those little blue spots in those river systems are refuges, okay? And so those are going to be an important part of the story, as you can imagine, because look at the hunting density, and it's not just that there's a lot of blinds. From one of our data points, like on December 7th, 2019, it's a Saturday, 93% of the blinds that we flew over had spinning wing decoys going. Okay, fast forward 10 days later on a random Wednesday, 80% of the blinds had spinning wing decoys going. So there's a lot of hunting, and these hunters hunt. I'm one of them. We hunt. Okay, so then it comes as no surprise and very intuitive that these refuges are super important because it's the only place you can sit without getting shot at. All right, and so during daytime, a lot of our ducks are on refuge. That's verified with our GPS data, and when we're flying, that's where we see our ducks. Okay, obviously as time goes on, they start to trade and feed out more at nighttime. So when they're on refuge, it's typically during the day, and then they forage on the refuge, and when very little is left, they start to go more and more frequently out to private lands, right? And where are they going? Well, more often than not, these are mallards. They're going to feed in flooded, unharvested cornfields. Now, if you look at the landscape of what is duck habitat here, a lot of West Tennessee private lands, a good portion of it, if it's going to be duck food, it's going to be flooded corn fields, okay? What's interesting, though, is no doubt ducks need food. It's kind of important. But what's stunning is that still, even at the end of February, so well past hunting season, there's still about 2/3 of the fields that we surveyed, mostly private lands, that still have corn available. So while food undoubtedly is important for ducks, at the amount that we put on the landscape, it's probably not the limiting factor for duck management. And when I think as a wildlife biologist, as a manager, you're always trying to identify what is it that's the limiting factor here? Because if we want more, we got to identify what's limiting the population. All right, it's part one of the story. If you do want to make one thing we have found is you want to make your duck corn more preferable, or you want to make it actually duck food, you can't just put corn up and hope you get a little bit of water on top. That water needs to be flooded to the ear, or at least within 1.5 feet of the ear. Otherwise, the duck is not going to eat on it. All right. This question was for me because I live, breathe, and dream duck hunting. And I wanted to know, okay, we have all this data. How can I use it to my advantage? When should I be in the blind, okay? And so we looked at what affects mallard activity. When are they flying? And more or less, when they're flying is right before a storm as the barometric pressure drops. Now, we looked at a lot of different variables. These are the only ones that are important. Barometric pressure dropping before a storm, when rivers crest over and they're at their flood stage. And then interestingly enough, they're flying more here at dusk than they are at dawn. All right. Interesting is ducky weather, as I would consider it, which is wet, cold, freezing weather. They're not flying, at least here, any more frequently. So what do these ducks do? Well, let me show you one of our movements. That's White Lake Refuge, and that purple is her right before the hunting season. This is a hen. She's hanging out. That's Miston Farms up there, some flooded corn. Up, hunting season starts. That refuge looks nicer and nicer. And she's feeling like, okay, what's going on? We're in 5-10 days into hunting season, and she kind of gets the gist of it. She's kind of tired of being shot at. And so this becomes her life. I'm just going to let it play out. Oh, one mistake, not doing that again. At some point, it should get a little boring, right? And I've kind of come to realize that a boring life for a duck is a pretty happy life. So let's talk about these refuges. If they play the central role in our duck ecology, right? If where ducks are located, well, certainly we're at least hoping they jump refuges, right? And you're seeing them jump these refuges. Those little orange lines on the right map are the refuges. But now look, once they jump a refuge, they go right back to that activity of refuge, back and forth, back and forth. And here's the interesting thing. These refuges, while these are state-owned refuges for the most part, some federal, but these state-owned refuges, there's actually a good number of them. They're just spaced, anywhere from 3 to, many miles apart, dozens of miles apart. And what you see is those movements are quite small when they leave a refuge. And so these refuges actually aren't all that connected. In fact, when you look at our ducks, 65% of them, the entire winter, just used one refuge. Okay? Now, some did use more than one refuge, but those that did, they wound up more often than not being hunted. And I remember quite angrily being upset to my students. I'm like, why are all of our cool ducks dying? The reason is because you don't want to be a cool duck in Tennessee, okay? So the question becomes, what's going on? All right, let me orient you to this map. That blue is, let's say, usable duck habitat. That's where the water is on the landscape, and let me make it a little easier to see, okay? And that orange buffer is just surrounding refuges, and what it shows is where 70% of all of our movements are located. So 70% of all of our movements are located within those little orange buffers. Despite all of that usable space for waterfowl up and down the river tributaries, 70% of the movement is happening right there. That's about 1.5 miles away from, within 1.5 miles of refuge. If you look within 1.5 miles to 2.5 miles, you add about another 15%. So about 85% of our ducks are within 2.5 miles of a refuge. Okay? Notice also that pink orientation is your public lands, and notice that there isn't a lot of overlap in those duck distributions and your public lands, but unsurprisingly, the ones where there are overlap, that's some of your best blinds, your best public lands. Okay, so what are we finding? Well, the truth is what we're finding, and I had extensive conversations with Jason Maxidon when we first started about what are the purposes of refuges. And honestly, I was open to either way. If refuges aren't important, then I'll say it. If they are important, we know where it does because you have refuges. Not have refuges that are undisturbed, they will just move to a different refuge. So the answer isn't somehow allowing people to access them more, it's creating more of them. Kind of counterintuitive, but stay with my thought here. If we had more refuges, places where it's the limiting factor, it will create more ducks on the landscape, but those ducks will also be better distributed up and down the river systems instead of in the little pockets that they're in. On top of that, I think if you actually had more safe areas, now I'm not talking like creating more public-owned refuges, but instead talk to private landowners about the importance of don't disturb your land so much. Put a little pocket of rest area aside, a little sanctuary for them. Even that would make ducks be more likely to trade up and down the river systems because they can go from one to the other. It's even just something like this, just 6 private landowners that wanted to put some rest areas in. This right there all of a sudden changes the picture of how ducks move up and down our West Tennessee River tributaries. And I think it also results in better hunting opportunity. Okay, as a hunter, this is kind of my thought on this. If you imagine you get so comfortable in a small area, you know the ins and outs, right? It's like your house. I could blindfold you and say, get to your bedroom, and you're gonna get it. Well, that's where our ducks are kind of right now. They know if I'm a white leg duck, like that Sam Bradshaw's blind over there, I'm gonna avoid that. Hey, Sam, but if we can actually increase their use along the river tributary system and get them to know more and more space, then they don't know the details. It's like a house versus a town. Okay, I wouldn't blindfold you and tell you to get to the grocery store walking through town. You're going to get hit by a car. But you get my idea, though, right? Maybe ducks would be more harvestable if they didn't know every single blind and every single inch and corner. But if they were moving up and down the tributary systems, things wouldn't be so fine scale. Let me pause. Sorry. Let me pause. Why is this doing this to me? That was supposed to be a dramatic pause. Okay. Now, what do these ducks do when they actually leave? Well, first thing is pretty cool is they go up in waves. They really do. Just like their fall migration down, they spring migrate back just in waves. And what you're going to see is they go anywhere from a couple 100 miles north to Minnesota, all the way to a couple 1,000 miles northwest, all the way up to Alberta, Edmonton, shores. A lot of our ducks wind up in the prairie potholes, but some go as far as Edmonton. All right. You can kind of see this is them settling out as they will. All right, and so during the summer, where are our Tennessee ducks at? I want you to just think about this for a second. These are ducks that are in a small area that we banded and put transmitters on in a very small area in Tennessee. And now when they go across in the summer, they cover half of a continent. All right, now the question is, when they come back down in the fall, do they come back to Tennessee? And the map on your right will show you kind of what these movements look like. This is the ducks. This is October. They're getting ready to migrate. And boom, here's the push. Here's the first storm. Here's the second storm. And I hope you're seeing where they're going. They're heading straight back home. And that path on the left right there just shows 3 random ducks that we have of different colors, but they all wind up right back where we trap them. They have very high regional, fidelity, if not very high site fidelity. We have one hen, and if you were interested, I'll show you the map later on. She literally travels thousands of miles, but her entire life is spent on hop-in refuge in the surrounding areas, and then she nested in the same exact location for 2 summers in a row. So you have an animal that travels thousands of miles, but spends its entire life on a couple hundred acres. All right, with that, I get to come up here and talk to you about it, but the real people doing the work, I'd like to acknowledge Corey Highway, the master's student on the project, and Nick Masto and Abby Blake Bradshaw, the PhD students on the project. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions you have. Thank you.
Dr. Cohen, that was just fascinating. I'm going to
Awesome.
turn this way and start all the way down with Commissioner Ballou. Did you have any questions? No, this information is not available to the hunters, so.
I'd just like to say I've heard a lot about this project over the last year or so, and man, it's absolutely fascinating, and I really appreciate it. I got notified, I think one of your ducks was actually in our duck hole. It made it up to the Tennessee National Wildlife Refuge up off Kentucky Lake.
So we have had a couple trade back and forth, but we actually did we got a couple extra freebie units, and we put a couple out over there in Kentucky Lake area just to see what they're doing as well too. So maybe it's one of those.
One thing I was going to ask you about, what about the feeding habits at night? We've got one of the duck holes that you were talking about. We plant corn, millet, we flood it. We hunt on the border of the Tennessee National Wildlife Refuge. 2 things I'm concerned about. One, we see ducks. We may go in the morning and run out 1,500 ducks, and then at daylight hits, you don't kill a duck, and then at dark, about 15 to 20 minutes after dark, past shooting hours, we get bombarded. You sit there and watch the show. Whether it's a full moon or no moon, the ducks feed a lot at night on us.
Yeah. So what we notice is a very strong transition. The second hunting season starts. It's not surprising, right? You can see by the hunting pressure, they go from feeding at crepuscular feeding, sunrise, sunset, a couple hours in the morning, couple hours in the evening, to nocturnally, really not wanting to move off that refuge, really, if you think about it, until they know it's safe, which is why every duck is landing in your decoy spread 2 minutes after legal shooting light. I will say that good duck management, I've helped manage some places in Louisiana, and when the property size allows it, good duck hunting usually works on the edges of your property. You leave the internals part alone, and you hope that ducks are hanging out there as almost like a little sanctuary area, and then you hunt the edges, because inevitably the ducks know the game. You come in and kick them off, and we see it with our GPS transmitters. There they are in all these cornfields or something like this, 45 minutes to an hour before shooting light, they're all kicked off, and they're heading back, and they're not leaving.
Right.
So in the end, it's all about pressure, and a lot of them, they're seeing this in Tennessee, but they've also seen it in Illinois. They know the game. They know it.
Right.
My question, is during all your banding and all the
Sorry about that. During all your research, banding, and all of the research that's going on, have you attempted to identify the difference in the feeding, whether it be corn, grain, or moist soil? Have you done any collection of data to identify the preference or selection of feed?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. So one thing that we haven't finished the analysis, but we go out and we not only are examining cornfields, but we're doing surveys on as many public and private properties as we can get on for also moist soil content. So we have all of that information, and the end goal would be to come here next year and tell you this is when the ducks are feeding on moist soil versus this is when ducks are feeding on what you call a hot food or something like that. So while I don't have the answer for you now, invite me back next year and I can have it for you.
Well, I had the privilege a month or so ago of touring the refuge with several of our commissioners, and it was fascinating to learn about that and what y'all were doing. We saw one of the traps, a couple of birds were in it. They had access to get out, but they seemed to enjoy being there until we disturbed them. But it's fascinating as we moved about on the refuge in different areas. I'm going to say there's probably 5,000 to 10,000 ducks that we flushed and moving back and forth. And of course, we had a lot of questions. I did, trying to learn about it and trying to identify their preference for grain, corn versus moist soil.
It's a little bit muddier of a conversation, right? Because, and pun intended, I guess, but really I think of corn as being like white bread, yeah, it tastes good and I'm happy to eat it, but I can't make a living off of white bread. So good management is a combination. Duck management is a little more complicated because it's also, you answer to the feds as well and their regulations for duck energy and stuff. But you need both. A good duck management program revolves around moist soil, which gives them an entire well-balanced nutrition, and something like a hot food like corn, where it's going to give them, high calories when they need it.
You hear more and more, and you touched on this, you hear people say that ducks are becoming nocturnal, and you mentioned that we see them, a lot of ducks after shooting hour, but are they truly nocturnal?
No. So let me explain this. Ducks, regardless, are crepuscular. Okay, what that means is that no matter what, they're moving during dawn and dusk. That's their preference. Our ducks aren't flying at night. They're landing there after shooting light, let's say, right? But they're staying where they land the entire time. Okay. So there's a couple things to think about. What ducks are becoming is what we would call stale. Okay. And stale duck means they're not, even with pushes, they learn the game really quick, and you can see ducks. I mean, everybody that hunts West Tennessee, if you're in a spot, you're going to see some ducks, especially if you're, within 2.5 miles of refuge. But the question is, are they willing to decoy? Are they going into that routine I showed you? And that's where I think it's not so much that they're nocturnal and unshootable. It's just that they know they don't want to run the gauntlet where all those blinds are and fly right in that area, because they're going to get shot at or sky busted. The idea is our problem more revolves around stale ducks and their fact that they're so intimate with their environment and know it so well, more so than that they're traveling at unhuntable times. Does that make sense? Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
It does. Thank you.
This is just the coolest thing. I love watching this. And I like getting y'all's updates on Facebook where they are. So thank y'all for doing this. And I wanted to go back to what you stated about the small rest areas. And I think we felt like too, the ducks have so much pressure, and they've had pressure for a while. Can you reiterate some ideas you had as far as the small rest areas and maybe how that's something we could do?
Yeah. So I think there's some potential ideas for creating rest areas would be some kind of either education or partnership with private lands to promote those landowners that are willing or wanting to put these areas aside. And we're not talking big areas. Based on research, we're talking, 80 acres or more would create a suitable rest area, an area where ducks know they're safe. And we're not talking about like the highest quality, everyone wants to hunt there type place. The ducks aren't there to eat. They want the thickest, nastiest stuff they can find because they're there to rest. So we're talking about a private lands partnership, education, whatever it may be, where we're just saying set aside a little bit and you'll see the benefits because you're going to see a lot more ducks. But also on the other side is that all of everyone up and down that river tributary system could see the benefits, I think. Did that answer your question?
Yes, that did. Thank you.
Okay.
I just think however we could figure that out, I think that'd be great to find a way to make that happen.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you.
Have you ever looked at window?
Have you ever studied one duck and seen it going to a certain spot and seen the resting? Like if somebody rested it 3 days, does it go there more often?
Okay.
Do you understand what I'm asking?
So let me just the question is about rest days. How long are our rest days, and do they, at some point, do they start to really kind of revisit that area and stay there? All right. We have two different sources of data there. And let me just kind of explain it. We collect all this food data, right? We have data how fast they eat it. On refuge, they eat that food very quickly. On private lands where most of our food is left over, where they hunt constantly, they don't eat it as fast. Makes sense, right? They don't want to be there. And then you have, the way we can get at that answer is some of our public lands are rested and then hunted, right? Like you think about thorny cypress or whatever. The general theme is that you have to rest a place at least 3 days for a duck to really believe that that is safe again. We see that also at the end of hunting season. It takes about 3 days for ducks to kind of loosen up, if you will, and start to explore their environment again. So 3 days is more or less what you should be shooting for before if you want a spot where ducks feel more comfortable. Does that answer? And I will say this. I hunted Thorny Pool 6 Thorny South Pool 6 about a week and a half ago. And we were in Pool 6 and they had rested, it was a Tuesday, so they had only rested for 2 or 3 days, but no one was hunting Pool 5 and there were thousands of ducks in there. Like the ducks know when it's safe. And even though we're shooting right next to them in Pool 6, they're happy as can be in Pool 5 knowing it's safe.
Yeah, your information, I got kind of tickled about when the ducks move and when they don't move, because there's duck hunters all up here that know exactly when they're going to move and when they don't. And you got a little line at the bottom when it's rain and when it's freezing cold, they don't move.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I've wasted a lot of days.
You got a
in the
lot of duck
fields.
hunters looking sideways at you this morning.
I know.
My question
Well,
is,
can I just say this? It doesn't mean they don't pick different spots, right? So they're just not flying. They're not flying more, but it doesn't mean that they're not more likely to pick near your blind compared to usual. I'm just throwing that out there. Like, I'm not trying to say that you won't have more success. I'm just saying they're not flying more.
all right, I want to go back to where the ducks go when they leave here. Most of the ducks that you banded here went to Minnesota. So
Yeah,
we've
let's say-
heard forever
Yeah.
that Saskatchewan prairie potholes is where our ducks come from.
Mhm.
That appears not to be true.
So it's partially true. About 40% of our ducks wind up in the potholes. About 30 to 40% wind up in Minnesota, Michigan area, right? Great Lake birds is what we'll call them. And another 20% actually shoot over the prairie potholes. So both are true.
That looked like about 80 or 90% stopped in Minnesota.
Those were just a random sampling. Those aren't all of our birds. Maybe it was a bad random sampling. But you certainly,
DU's
what is
not here, so it's okay.
I don't think that there's any doubt that we have a very interesting mix here. That if you look at where Arkansas birds are going, so we're collaborating with people in Arkansas that are putting GPS transmitters up, they all go to the prairie potholes. There is no doubt that Tennessee has something different going on where we do get Great Lake birds and some prairie potholes. But there is no doubt that we are not in the truest sense of the LMAV birds that come down and then shoot back to the prairie potholes.
All right, I suppose if you banded ducks in Louisiana, those ducks go wherever and come back to where you banded them. They come back home, so Louisiana's getting ducks. So
we have
they're getting
that.
their own ducks.
So I mentioned that we're collaborating with Arkansas. We're also collaborating with people in Louisiana, same type of GPS transmitters, and that's exactly what I'm telling you holds up across studies.
It's very interesting. Thank you.
Yep.
So thank you very much, Dr. Cohen. This is fantastic information. I think the most compelling thing you said was the ducks are as smart as a lot of people, and Tennessee's a great place to live. And we're going to take a 10-minute break. Crank back up. This time I'd like to call Jamie Feddersen to the microphone, Migratory Game Bird Coordinator, to talk about a agency recommendation.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Commissioners. It won't be a recommendation at this point. What we're doing is we're just going to preview the potential seasons and bag limits for migratory game birds. This will be action that we'll ask you to take at the February Commission meeting. So this is just a preview of the agency thoughts about where we would like to lay the migratory game bird seasons. And so I'm just going to give you a little what's up. Here's what's coming ahead. Talk a little bit about some of the public input we've solicited. We'll talk about the early season migratory game birds, and then ducks, geese, and cranes, and then finish it up with hunting with raptors. So every year we solicit public input usually between October 15th and November 15th. We received 212 emails or letters this year, which came from 200 unique individuals for this particular public input request. And that was because we got about 150 that were related specifically to duck blinds and not necessarily about seasons and bag limits. I'll just give you a quick overview of what we received from the public input on the duck blinds. Really, we got 127 that said return back to the in-person drawings. 69 said do away with the tier blinds. And then we had 34 that said do not change anything about the current system that we have for duck blind drawings. We also received quite a bit of feedback on suggested changes to the current draw system, as well as some criticism of it as well. So with the input that we received for migratory game birds, a lot of it is not necessarily allowed in federal frameworks. It would be things like have the September wood duck season the same length as the September teal season. It's just that's something that we can't do according to the federal frameworks. End duck season 2 weeks later or push it to the end of February. It's just outside the frameworks. It's just not something that we can do. So while I appreciate that input, our hands are tied, really legitimately tied on that. We also got we also got a lot of numerous WMA specific type of input, like implementing 50 shell limits on for duck hunting on WMAs, do away with spinning wing decoys, add rest days. Things like that. And those are things that will carry over to where those ideas would be more appropriately incorporated. They just don't fit into this particular proclamation about season dates and bag limits for migratory game birds. So those early season type of migratory game birds that we're talking about, here's the list. Basically anything that flies to Tennessee that you can shoot. I'll note that there were no changes in the federal frameworks for any of these species. Actually, there were no changes in the federal frameworks for any of the migratory game birds this year. Nothing for ducks, geese, cranes, nothing. So we're still within the same frameworks, still within the same season lengths and bag limits that we had, that we are currently under this particular season right now. So we're talking about setting seasons for 2022-23. So we can basically we'll have the same season lengths and bag limits that we are currently hunting right now. Just for, they fall within the same range of dates that we currently have for them. Nothing out of the ordinary here. Here's your dove seasons. Again, falling within the same traditional time that they might normally fall. For waterfowl, for the ducks and coots and geese, again, no changes in the federal frameworks, so we can have all the same season lengths and bag limits for these guys. Here's what we're proposing for next season. And so sort of traditionally, we've landed on well, up until a few years ago, the frameworks were you had to end the season on the last Sunday in January, and that changed, like I said, a couple years ago to the 31st. So now I'm going to show you a calendar here in a minute. Before I do that, I just will note that we do have that hybrid split season type of bag limit for SCOP again this year. But if you look at the calendar, the 31st is January 31st ends on a Tuesday. So if you stick with our traditional calendar, we hunt the 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, the weekend after Thanksgiving, and then so that gives us 58 days remaining. So if you end the season on the 31st and you count back 58 days, you will always start our phase 2 on December 5th. It just, that's the way it works out. So we did a poll of hunters, I think back in 2018 when we could first change this. And overwhelmingly, it was like 83% or so of the hunters said, we want to end the season on the 31st, hunt as late as possible. So the youth waterfowl days would be the 2 Saturdays following the end of the duck season, and then our veterans and active military personnel hunt waterfowl days would be on the 2 Sundays following the end of the regular duck season. We try to get our goose seasons to overlap completely with those duck seasons. So we made some adjustments there on those phase 2 for white-fronted geese, our Canada goose and brant, and then our light geese, which you'll see here on the next slide. Phase 1 and phase 2 are sitting in their same, and phase 3 are sitting in their same traditional spots. The phase 4, again, it's overlapping with the closure, but then there's additional days beyond that they can hunt. We have 107 total days that we can hunt geese. Again, light goose season, exactly the same as what you just saw for the Canada goose. And then after the close of the goose seasons, then we can move into the light goose conservation season. This is the season that it's extended for the snow geese to help with the overpopulation. And this is the one where you can hunt with unplugged guns and use electronic calls, and there's no bag limits, things like that. It's just to help promote trying to get more geese harvested to try to get that population down. The crane season, again, we've got hunting through December and January, and we have our traditional closure in the southeast crane zone right around to accommodate the Sandhill Crane Festival that we help host. Again, we'll be distributing 2 tags per hunter for a total of 2,500 tags that we can distribute. So, and it's because we have to make some adjustments to the calendar dates for that, and they're just very simple calendar dates, date changes. Nothing dramatic here. They get really, really long seasons. So you're looking at like, well, how come? Yeah, November 26th through February 28th for ducks. Well, there aren't a lot of raptor hunters out there, and they're just not taking a lot of ducks, and they're not having a major impact on it. So they get pretty liberal seasons. And so just to summarize, these are proposed season dates and bag limits. They fall within the federal frameworks. We're really only proposing simple calendar date changes for the 2022-23 hunting season. And we're happy to take, I'm happy to take questions and listen to input from the commissioners and from the public for the next month. And we'll be back in February with an actual proposal.
Thanks, Jamie. Boy, this is a lot of really detailed information. You've done a wonderful job of presenting it to us.
Thank you.
So we can better understand it, this preview, working towards the When you get these comments on these open periods, is there any sort of requirement that they identify themselves and who they are? So if you have a follow-up question, you can get back to them? Are they anonymous comments, or how does that work?
Well, the ones we get are through email. So if there is a specific question, we can email them back. Yes,
Okay,
yes.
Good, good. So Commissioner Cox, I think you had a question.
There have been suggestions to combine the early real foot opener with statewide season. And I'm just getting it on record that may be discussed because it's been suggested, and I think it needs to be out there in case that's something that ends up being discussed next. Somebody can't hear me? I said that there's been some suggestion that the real foot early season be basically done away with and start the entire state at the same time. Start January 31st and back it up 60 days and everybody start at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I thought it's appropriate to get that on the record. So if that was discussed next month, that it would be noticed where those that may be in favor or oppose it could comment. Yeah.
I think it makes some sense to look at that for their 2 days to join the rest of the state, but only if we have an outreach program to the guides and those with that are blind holders there and that hunt reelfoot. We'd really want to do what they want to do, and there may be a consensus that they'd love to do that or they hate the idea, but it would be great for the agency to do some direct outreach.
I've been approached by a few guides and on reelfoot, and they do want to look into that.
I just want to, with Wally, same way. I've had 2 or 3 guides that have contacted me, just same thing. So I appreciate you being here and doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Rip?
Jamie, remind me of why we have a real foot season versus a statewide season.
You know, that predates me a long time. I don't know that I can tell you the reason why that was set up, other than you know, I think just to sort of highlight and showcase reelfoot, it would be like one of the periods in time that we could really highlight reelfoot as a duck hunting entity. You know, because it just kind of isolates them in space and time, at least within Tennessee, as far as you know, good quality duck hunting.
All right.
The explanation that I received was that several years back, there used to be a lot of early birds, and that has changed through the years, and now that's maybe not the case. And if you remember the graph that you put up, the light green versus the dark green, then many have said they like to go with combining the 12th and 13th date with the 26th and 27th date. So, you know, that's consideration for next meeting.
Jimmy, got a couple of things. You know, we're trying to do some things to help people that's traveling, hunting and whatnot. And I polled a few people. I've been asked to request that the agency look at this for the veterans and the juvenile hunt, to combine the juvenile hunt one weekend, Saturday and Sunday, and the veterans a Saturday and Sunday. That way, if they are traveling, then come in on Friday night, set their decoys out, pick them up Sunday when they leave, and you don't have a Saturday juvenile hunt. Have to put up their decoys that morning, pick them up that evening. Veterans have to come in that next morning, put theirs out and take up and everything else. Just ask y'all to talk about that and consider that, and ask around and see a few people what they think about that.
Yeah, all these requests, we can absolutely look into these.
Okay.
For sure.
And one more thing, I've been asked you all to look into. And I don't know, I mean, it's going to take some figuring out to do with the tier 2 blinds, but Camden Bottoms, I've been asked that you all look into some days of rest for the Camden Bottoms. I know right now, right now it's a duck thing. The ducks ain't there. They're just not there.
Mhm.
So that's not what's hurting the Camden Bottoms right now. But next year hopefully it's back and whatnot. But the hunters down there that I know and have come to me and asked me if I would request that you all look into trying to figure out some way of giving them bottoms some rest.
And that's something that we'll take up in the April-May season setting, because it would be a WMA specific type of request. So that gives us a little bit more time to work on that. But we'll throw that into the pile of things that we need to look at and consider. Certainly.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I had the opportunity to talk to a few guides in Reelfoot area. One specifically, Ben Parker. Ben sent me a letter that I can share with everyone. But Ben Parker is pretty substantial, runs a substantial guide service there in Reelfoot and hunted there for years. But Ben actually requested that he thought it would be better that if we did away with the early Reelfoot system or the 2-day special hunt, and that that Reelfoot hunts the same days, opens up the same days as the entire state does. He said, as Angie, I think, had mentioned earlier, he said it's a safety issue. The place is overrun. It's not, he said he would rather see, as like Kent said, on the maybe putting the 2 juvenile hunt days together and the 2 veteran days together. I know obviously in February we get better migrations and sometimes we get better hunting. Last year was fantastic, especially the second juvenile and the second Veterans Day hunt in February. But he thought it would be a good idea to put the juvenile hunt in November and make that a special 2-day hunt, statewide 2-day juvenile hunt in November, rather than having some of the younger men and women out in February when could be icier, colder, or harder hunting. But I know sometimes we get better hunting in February than we do November as well. So, I mean, it's a trade-up. But he mentioned that, one, due to, better on the kids, one, and two, for the travel plan as well.
Yeah,
so I think we definitely need to look at that Reelfoot 2-day special hunt and maybe collect some more data on it.
Yeah, certainly. That's something we can absolutely look at. And just so you know, just so everybody's clear, as far as placement of these special youth and military days, the only thing that we're bound by is that they have to occur, at least for the youth hunts, they have to occur on days when the youth are not in school, and they have to be within 14 days of an opening or closure of the regular duck season. So the weekend that you're proposing certainly fits within that range. So I just want to let you know that we do have some limitations about, some frameworks on those, as well as where we can put them.
So thanks, Jamie, for all this great information. And I think you got some work cut out. We got 30 more days for comments, correct?
Yes. Well, whatever the length of time is between now and the next commission meeting. Yes.
Okay. So I encourage all the people out there that want to make comments to get those. And we've talked about Reelfoot. We've talked about the youth and the veterans. And so this will be the end of the Wildlife Committee, Mr. Chairman. And I would like to ask any person in the audience that would like to speak to the commission, please come to the microphone and identify yourself, and we'll allow you 3 minutes to speak to the commission at this time.
Hello, I'm Brad Carrier. I'm from Dixon, Tennessee, currently residing in Charlotte, Tennessee. I appreciate you having the time, allowing me to come up here today. Many of you received emails from me. I don't know, probably more than you would like, but here in the last month, we performed a independent survey, and I'm sure some of you are aware. I don't know if all of you are aware, but we had 1,623 respondents. And I would be glad to take any questions you may have over that particular survey. I know that doesn't have to do with exactly what was presented earlier, but if you have any questions, one, you can answer it. You can ask them now. I'll be glad to answer what I can. The survey just ended on Monday, just in time for this commission meeting. So there was some pretty interesting feedback from that, and I don't know if there's a way I can present that to you all to be shown at a later date, or if you have the availability to pull that up. But anyways, there's that. Do y'all have any questions for me in regards to the survey itself?
Mr. Carrier, thank you for being here. And I have seen your description of that survey and the results and so forth. And I have asked Director Wilson to take a look at that and have our own statisticians that we have on staff to look at that. I'm not familiar. It was done through something called
SurveyMonkey, which
I'm not familiar with.
When I was a young student about 10 years ago, University of Tennessee, Martin, down the road, when we were to do a research project, the University of Tennessee at that time, again, we're talking about 10 years ago, had a contract with SurveyMonkey. So that's what I was familiar with. I think now maybe the University of Tennessee has Quadratics as their survey contractor. But anyways, as far as the platform itself, it has been within the university system before as a recognized survey program. So as far as that particular question, there's, it is or has been have been contracted with the university prior. So,
and for any commissioner that hasn't received a copy of Mr. Carrier's email with the description of the results, let me know and I will make sure that you get it.
Okay. But pretty interesting feedback across regions. We would have loved to had gotten more response from Region 3. Again, this was put out through social media, email, text. I tried to reach out to individuals I knew that were in Region 3 that do not stand where I stand on some of the issues, but wanted to get their honest feedback. And you were mitigated or only allowed to respond to the survey once. Again, there's some type of tracking. Somebody in IT may be able to tell you more how that is, but it would not allow you to respond twice, at least from the same device.
One of the things that just jumped out at me was a disparity, seems, in the number of respondents to the SurveyMonkey survey versus the agency survey. So we're going to look at that. I think Commissioner Butt has a question.
You just covered part of my response, that you explained the parameters of the survey.
Yes,
for those who responded, about the concern about more than one person responded to multiple times. But to the other suggestion that maybe the wording of some of the material was such that it may be swayed how they responded. But other than that, I think that you can be assured that we will consider the responses along with all of the agency responses, because from a commission standpoint, we want all the input. We want to be able to assess it. We want to be able to address it. And we're, to the best of our ability, want to get it right for the best that we can for all of the hunters and all in consideration. Thank you,
Well,
Brad.
I appreciate it. And as far as I realized that in that particular survey, you saw a lot more response from Region 1 and Region 2. You have Region 3 and 4. Really, if you look at the applicants on these tier blinds and the season-long draws, I've made and kind of had in there some modification factors for adjustments just to show you, that, hey, actually Region 4 outperformed what they have done in the tier draws in the season-long draw. And as far as that's concerned, we'll be glad to discuss that further with you all. And thank you for considering that survey in part of the evaluation process. With the tier draw surveys, the post-hunt surveys, there is some issues that I see that you have a total pool of applicants and then you have permittees, and only the permittees have been able to respond to those post-hunt surveys. The regions, and you can see from previous publications in other meetings that there has been a drop between.
Mr. Carey, I'm not sure we need to debate this today.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Childress has a question.
Okay,
And then
yes, sir.
I think we'll turn it over to our staff to analyze this. And
Okay.
as the chairman said, we'll take it.
Thank
This isn't the parameters that we need to debate this today.
Yes, sir.
Hey, were they all hunting license holders that took the survey?
Can you determine that? I
That's
don't
what I'm
believe so.
asking you. I don't know.
I don't think you can determine that. And I really, with the post-hunt surveys, don't think you can do that as well. Because you don't have to have a license to apply for these tier hunts or be awarded these hunts. So that's something for the commission to consider as well in the evaluation process. I would like to add, I know I've wasted
I
a
think
lot of time.
we've already established that we're going to
Yes, sir.
the staff do this. And Commissioner Childress, you have any follow-up to this?
I thought the permittees would have to have a license to hunt.
No, sir.
To hunt.
No, sir.
That Commissioner,
The survey we send
is
out,
that,
you have
could you
to
speak to
hunt.
that,
Maybe not to
Director
apply.
McStone?
This year was an application fee that they applied by, but we can run a search on that to see if all the applicants that applied, we can see if they have a hunting license. when we do that.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Carey, for
Thank
your
you.
time and
Mr.
we'll,
Chairman, I
Oh,
got
I'm sorry.
something. Brad,
Yes, sir.
I appreciate the passion that you have shown about your sport and the way you've pursued it. But I don't think we know each other.
I understand.
And some of the emails that I have gotten that infer that I or this commission or the agency has been in some kind of underhanded skullduggery or cheating or lying or fixing, even though we have acknowledged a couple of mistakes. If you've got something to ask or a point to make, my phone is listed. I'm here.
I'll give you a call.
But I don't appreciate my honesty and ethics being questioned on an email sent to 100 people.
I understand.
So if you need to talk to me, or I suspect anybody on this commission, you give us a call and we'll talk to you and be honest with you and find out what information you need. But I'd appreciate it if you wouldn't do that.
Yes, sir. All right.
Chairman, that concludes the Wildlife Committee meeting, unless there's anybody else in the audience that would like to make a public comment relative to the Wildlife Committee. Seeing none, Mr. Chairman, that concludes the Wildlife Committee meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, this time we'll recognize Fisheries, Commissioner Woods, Chairman.
Here he comes, Frank Fish.
All right, so I can get oriented here. So last month we had good afternoon, Commissioner, sorry.
Last month, we heard the announcement of the Bill Dance signature lakes, and we saw the big picture that has us all very excited to move forward. What I wanted to talk about today was just some of the details that Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency has been doing behind the scenes, below the water and a little bit above the water, to get us a head start on this, because we knew it was going to take time for these fisheries to respond, the ones where we have to do a lot of work, and there's a lot of maintenance to be done at these facilities as well. There are many partners, and they all have different roles in this project as we move forward. What I'll be talking about today is just the work that TWRA is doing, just to keep, and there's will be a lot more work to be done. This is just like one layer being pulled back to start understanding all the good things that are going to happen with this program. First, let me break it down, because there's been some confusion among my staff about what the program is. The way I see it, there are three components to that program. First, there's the small lakes. These are places where we want to have top of class facilities and great fishing. A lot of these small lakes are not currently known for great fishing right now, so there's a lot of intense fisheries management that needs to be done to get them to that level. But luckily, they're small lakes, and we believe that we can use some intensive, essentially pond management programs where we're stocking fish that we don't normally stock. We're really intensely look at habitat to turn these lakes around. Then the next layer are large reservoirs. There's 9 of them that have been selected. These are lakes where we want to have top shelf facilities at each one of these, at least one area where people can come and enjoy the great fishing that's already on those lakes. And the third component is what will be called the Bill Dance Big Bass Cup. And now this is going to be a tournament series that's going to be administered by a nonprofit foundation. So let's look at the small lakes. This is where they're located. Most of the smaller lakes are in East Tennessee or West Tennessee. 6 of those are located on state park lakes. And then we have Parsons, which is owned and operated by TWRA, and Carroll County Lake. Within this set of lakes, we're going to have 2 different management priorities. Not all of them can be trophy bass fishing lakes. Most of them we're going to manage for quality family fishing. We want to have a great experience to use the facilities, to show up and catch very good catch rates of decent fish. They're on Carroll County, Pin Oak, and Browns Creek. We think we have enough enough water there and opportunity to manage for a trophy bass fishery. We already have a pretty good fishery on Browns Creek. That one's a little further along. Now, the management of these 2 different types of small lakes is fairly similar, but like I said, we're going to have better fishing access, better facilities at both of these. The management priorities will be different between these 2. Family fishing, we're going to look at what it takes to have high catch rates for people that are just coming to the lake for the first time. On the trophy bass lakes, there's going to be another layer where we are managing for those big fish. We are doing fish surveys on all these and looking at water quality, both regardless of our management style. The stocking will be a little different. On the family fishing lakes, we'll be stocking more catfish and trout. We're experimenting with copper-nosed bluegill. On the trophy bass lakes, and even a little bit on the family fishing lakes, we're putting some forage fish in, threadfin shad, golden shiners, and probably stocking catfish on both. So there's going to be a little bit of overlap between the 2 programs. Just because we have something managed for trophy bass doesn't mean we don't want people to have an easy experience fishing as a family there. And we're going to use fish feeders for the first time at these facilities these are designed to make fishing better near easy access bank areas to improve fishing. We may do some of that at the trophy bass lakes as well. We are enhancing fish habitat on all of these lakes. We're using pre-manufactured structures that we're purchasing and putting at the best locations. And that's why we're doing some of the lake mapping that we're doing. We're not familiar with all these lakes. Again, a lot of these are state park lakes where we've not really been involved in managing them in the last few decades, really. We've occasionally sampled them and given recommendations, but we've never had, always had support from the park or whatever to keep that management going forward. So we're learning a lot about these lakes, and we're going to improve the habitat to the point where we think it will help the fishing. We look at the large reservoirs. Here are the 9 reservoirs. And our management priority here, again, is to have one high-quality access area on each of these. I know that TWRA's engineering crew has already started work on this. They've worked on Pickwick, at Pickwick State Park. They worked with on Douglas and Dandridge, and they also worked a little bit on Pin Oak Lake and Natchez Trace State Park. But we want to have large ramps, big parking areas, courtesy lights, courtesy docks, lighting, decent bathrooms, fishing piers. We want to do work on the shoreline in these areas as well. A lot of opportunity. We want to draw a lot of people to these places, and we want these places to be able to accommodate those people. And from a fisheries management point of view, at these large impoundments, we've been managing these fisheries for 50 years. We've done a lot of the tricks that we know we can do. We're always open to trying some new things, but by and large, on these lakes are running, 20, 30,000 acre lakes. We can't show up with a stocking truck in most cases and just turn that around. We were already doing the stocking that we feel like we need to do, or the other management that we need to do. Like examples would be Dale Hollow for smallmouth bass, Kentucky Lake for crappie bass fishing, and places like Watauga, Douglas Norris. All those are places that have decent fisheries right now, and we really need to have is a really good access area at each of these to promote this program. So what has TWRA Fisheries Division been doing to date? We've had an annual budget of $300,000 in the last fiscal year, and that's going to roll forward for a few fiscal years. What we're doing with those dollars is actually buying the fish that we're stocking, buying fish feeders, buying fish feed, buying artificial habitat, paying for water sample analyses, and doing any other fisheries type improvements that we see that we need to do, maybe repairing a pier or putting in a bank trail or something. Whatever it is we need to do, we're ready to do it to get these lakes to the next level. Some of the things that we've already started were the fish surveys. We started those in 2020. We want to have a baseline of where these small lakes are when we start to assess what their potential is, and then demonstrate that we have met the goal of the lake. We've already started stocking forage fish on several of the lakes. We spent about $55,000 on fish last year. We've installed feeders, tens of thousands, or not tens of thousands of feeders, but thousands of dollars worth of feeders. They've already been operating on Fall Creek Falls as a good example of where we've gotten pretty far ahead in progress. We've started mapping some of the lakes. We hope to be able to provide a nice map online that maybe somebody could download to their GPS, or at least be able to see for some of these lakes that haven't been mapped in years. Based on what we're seeing underwater, we're installing these habitats. We also are planning the renovation of facilities. Now, we know we have a lot of work to do at Parsons. I'll be talking about that a little later today, but we've also want to be involved in the fisheries team, especially involved in the planning of renovations when we coordinate with state parks on their property. And lastly, we are preparing management plans, and a twist on these plans. Usually our management plans are designed to maximize the benefits from the water based on the techniques that we can use there, and we get public input to make sure we're trying to provide the best possible fishery. In this case, we have a different layer in that we are working with the steering committee of all these other partner agencies, and we are going to prepare these plans such that everyone understands what we see as a signature lake worthy fishery, and we'll know. And with that, I'll take any questions. Some of the guys putting some habitat out at Fall Creek Falls. Commissioner Blue.
I was just going to ask Frank, what was the total budget that we're going to have for this series?
Is about $300,000 a year.
Okay, I saw that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now,
but that's what's going to be designated for the Bill Dance series?
That's just fisheries activity. Now, there's millions of dollars, I think 1.5 million for the, there's on the books now for the large access area renovations. Director Richardson usually has these numbers on his fingertips, but he's not here. I've looked up, he's gone. So, but it is millions of dollars, and State Parks is also has a large budget that they're going to work through to get their facilities up to par as well. And tourism, yes, yeah, tourism is going to drive the marketing of this. We also are going to have partners in TVA, the Army Corps of Engineers, and any of the local municipalities where we end up putting a ramp or improving a ramp.
On the large lake map that you showed the 9 lakes that had the blue dot, and then you showed Reelfoot up in the corner. That was just a reference, or
that dates back to the early season of duck hunting. The Reelfoot's always different. No, Reelfoot was selected as it's a place where we really are managing the fishery the way we are. We don't see big opportunities for change there, but we did want to have it on the Signature Lake program. We want to improve the access to Reelfoot Lake as far as maybe courtesy docks at more of the ramps, which are very rare right now. Any way we can develop more bank fishing or like piers or jetty fishing to make the lake more easily engaged by families or people that are just showing up here. But it will be, but it will not be. The reason it's green really is all the ones with the blue dots are places where that big bass tournament series will run. We will not be encouraging bass boats to be running on Reelfoot Lake because that won't work for anybody. So that's really why it's different. It won't. We don't, in our vision right now, it won't be included in a tournament series, whereas the other lakes will. Yeah. Yes.
Has there been a timeline set to complete all this? And probably not, because I don't think we even have a full scope of work yet. But who's the driving force? Are we the driving force, or is there a coalition? Is that team together yet?
There is a steering committee that's made up of the TWRA staff, TDEC, State Parks, tourism. The Bill Dance Outdoors has a management team, fisheries management team that's interested in what we consider for our standards. I'm missing some people, but that'll be the group that helps in the planning. We've got State Parks is one that we really need to coordinate with soon. We don't want to prematurely announce any of these as open until we have the minimum standards identified and met. At least that's my understanding as we go forward. So on a timeline, we knew that it would take years to turn around some of these small impoundments. That's why we jumped in early into 2020 before we even knew this was for sure going to happen to start that moving. But it's going to take at least another couple of years to start seeing changes on those small lakes. Maybe some of the stuff can be instant though. If we start stocking trout at a Montgomery Bell Lake, and we advertise that people will be able to come and do that instantly, more catfish stocking. So some things on what we've been calling as the underwater side, we can kind of see when they're going to get done. And we'll stumble along the way, but we've got a vision of where we want to get to. On the facility side, that can be challenging just because of the volume of work that needs to be done. And and we're not the agency that's going to be doing all that work. So we are soon to have these coordinating meetings now that we've announced it and we know this is happening, we've got all the support we need. It's time to really just start planning and go from conceptual level to much more detailed level.
Very good. Well, it's a very exciting project, and let's just keep the wheels turning on it. Is there anything we can do to help? Please reach out.
Anybody else got any questions?
Yeah, before you leave fishing, I would like to take just a second. Mr. Broadbent, yeah, that's you. I know you're very excited about this project. No, seriously, and I've been waiting I missed the chance in October. But the West Tennessee Fisheries guys and Tim Broadbent and his group helped with the catfish tournament in September on the Mississippi River. And I know it's a lot of trouble and it's a lot of effort and maybe some overtime, but the service that you guys provide, taking fish and putting them back in the river, we didn't lose one fish. And the public relations and ambassadorship that you guys give to the public out there, people love that, and it's appreciated. And I just want to tell you thank you.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I think that's any other comments from anybody in the audience? All right, this concludes it.
All right.
Thank you, Chairman Wood, Commissioners.
Thank you, Chairman Woods. And thank you, Frank Fiss, for your presentation. At this time, I would recognize Commissioner Bill Cox, our Chairman of Budget.
Frank, you're up next.
Stay up there.
Okay, we get to talk about Herb Parsons soon. So we have, as we just mentioned, it's going to be expensive to fix some of these lakes up. We're asking for $2.5 million to be expanded in the FY22 budget for Herb Parsons Lake. And I got a few slides just to talk about what we're going to do with this sum of money. Herb Parsons Lake is one of our TWA fishing lakes. That means it's one of them that where you have to buy a permit if you want to fish, if you want to use it, basically. So we sell a permit for that lake. It's managed pretty intensively. It's located in Fayette County and not very far from Shelby County. So it serves a large metropolitan area, 177 acres. And it is on the Bill Dance Signature Lake program. And, we're asking for these funds because it's time to do work there. But I want to mention that Damon Boyce, Hunter Henley, Tim Broadbent, all the people that have been working on this lake have done a great job to this point. It's not that they've run it into the ground. They've kept it going very nicely. And it's just time to do a major investment there. And most of the facilities were built in the 1950s. And I don't think they were designed to withstand time that well because some of them are rotting considerably. It's just time to take this to the next level here. Building it's actually on the lake. We need to down and build a new one that has some more retail space with place to prepare food, storage areas, HVAC, new deck, and tie in our public restrooms to this facility. So that could be a $500,000 project on its own. And we need a new storage building there with an office, work areas, restroom, and we need to secure the water supply system for all those buildings. On the grounds, we have a lot of resurfacing to do and parking areas. I think it was 160,000 square feet of road or asphalt to work on. We want to improve the boat ramp area. We want to install a fish cleaning station, an automatic gate, new signs, fencing, landscaping, security lights, picnic areas, pavilions, and playground. We generally don't manage our lakes for anything but fishing, but we understand that family fishing can be important to have something to do for non-fishing members of your family while they're there. So we want to entertain these kinds of concepts as we move forward. So there's a lot of money going into this grounds improvement as well. And then in the water, the underwater work, Damon's developed a map of kind of where he wants to put everything in a conceptual design anyway. And this is just the image of where we'd like to dredge some shallow areas so there'd be deeper holes near shore where people are feeding or fishing from the bank. We also are going to add fish attractors throughout the lake. We're going to add additional fishing piers. He's got designs for a couple large T-style piers with roofs on them. And then in addition to that, there'd be several satellite piers. So if you're walking the trail, you can get on a decking of some sort and fish off of it. Not a large structure, but several of those around the lake. We're going to install fish feeders near these high traffic fishing areas. And the thinking with these feeders is it attracts the fish in, and we would hope to get better growth rates on the fish that are partaking of the feeder, and maybe even better catch rates there. And we'll be continue to stock catfish. And again, we're trying this copper-nosed bluegill thing, which is something that private pond managers use quite a bit. And we're going to see how they do. We're going to have the feeders there, so we'll see if we can grow a bigger bluegill, but that remains to be seen, but it certainly is not hurting anything to try. We're very open to trying new things on these projects because we know where we've got doing what we've been doing. We've got more resources now. We want to try some new things. And that's really it. I just want to give you an overview of where that money would be going, and it will take years to get that work done, no doubt, with 2 buildings to be built, all that paving, and purchasing, and underwater work. But we have to get the money in the budget now so that we can start talking about contracts. Get it done.
Are there any questions? Whoever, go ahead.
All the work, Frank, take the decimal out of between the 2 and the 5. Does that include all of that work? Or is this
Yeah,
just the start?
actually, the budget that we have, I hope you're not bidding on this. The budget that we have is, it was around 2.2 million, and I rounded it up to 2.5 just to be ready for problems. But surely we can get it done for 2.5.
That's great. If you can get all that done for that, that's really great.
Yeah. Well, we have. I don't know how well vetted we've been with our engineering team, Jay, but surely we can get it. I think when when our chief of engineering and I spoke, we got to a 3 million number. I felt a little nervous about that. We'll work hard. We'll let you know if we need more.
What's wrong with 2.9?
Maybe we better start watching Jay's budget and see if he's over budgeting some of that. Are we going to stock channel catfish or blues or what?
Typically channels, either or, I think.
Yeah.
But I know they've used both in the past. It depends on availability.
Commissioner Granberry?
Yeah, first I'd like to make a motion to approve as presented for the Budget Committee, and then comment to camp on Commissioner Woods' comment. I think everybody at this table and everybody in this audience understands the unique opportunity that this Bill Dance Lake Series has for this state. So I'm not giving you a blank check and I'm not taking away decimal points, but please don't hesitate to come back to this commission to make sure that we do this right. And the same thing should be told to tourism and everybody else involved, TVA, TDEC. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity with probably one of the most iconic sportsmen in this nation. And we don't need to mess up this opportunity. So whatever it takes, let's get it right. So I make a motion to approve this first 2.5 million as presented for Herb Parsons.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I would thank Representative Gant for helping with this project and putting the governor's office and trying to coordinate some of this. And to just tell you how old this lake is, when I was in the Boy Scouts, there was a camp up there and I got my hiking merit badge hiking around the lake. They said it was 5 miles. I think it's more like 8.
Can we get you a merit badge? Can we get you a merit badge for rebuilding the cabin?
No.
1900, none of your business.
All in favor on the Budget Committee, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
And I think Chris Richardson is going to do double duty. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, you can ask it. Go ahead and ask it now.
Get Frank.
Frank,
Just
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
with a quick comment, it's just an awesome project and it's a wonderful asset. The lake is really surrounded by a wonderful hardwood forest, but they have a series of mountain bike trails around. Will those be part of the project or maintained or at least left intact? The running and hiking and biking trails?
We don't have any intention of that I've heard of backsliding on that component of it. And you know, it's a bigger question as an agency, how much more of that we do at other places than limiting that there. Because I know that my understanding is that those organizations also, you know, support maintenance of those as well. So it's been good.
And they're kind of self-maintained, but they're pretty highly utilized by, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, you can do that. It's up. Go ahead. Go ahead with that if you want to. It's fine.
Thank you, Chairman Cox, members of the commission. I am standing in for Chief Fiscal Officer Tarkington today for the financial report, as he was unable to travel due to the weather. You have a copy of this, and don't want to necessarily read it to you, but wanted to show you quickly. These are our projected incomes for the funds that we have, and also the actual collections year to date, and you can see the difference. Both on boating and on wildlife. I don't want this to be confused with this being yet another increase in license sales and boat registrations such that we saw in 20. The projections that we use are based on a longer term average as opposed to just 1 year. And we are actually slightly down from the COVID year, which we would expect to be at this point because we had such a dramatic increase in license sales during 2020. This shows the balance in the Wetlands Acquisition Fund. Property is changing hands in the state of Tennessee at a rapid rate, and that fund is doing quite well. And there are some expenditures from that fund that aren't showing here that we'll show at the next financial report. This shows the Treasury invested funds and reserve balances. I will say the great news about the State Pooled Investment Fund, or the SPIF, is it's gone up. It's gone from 0.03% interest to 0.04% interest. So making a little bit extra on the SPIF. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the financial report, and be happy to answer any questions that I can.
Just a question, the license fee drop, is that normalized for the fee changes that might have occurred, and then do we have any data on what the actual license numbers did? Not in revenue sense, but the number of licenses.
I can get you that data. I'm told, I'm looking to both Susie and Jennifer, who have indicated that don't get excited about showing above the projections because we've adjusted our projections downward to account for what was such a dramatic jump in 2020. I think we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 or 3% down from 2020, which is still up over our 5-year average. But I'll get you the particulars on the sales from both Susie and Jennifer and get it to you by email.
Anyone else? Thank you, sir.
If it's okay with you, Chairman, I'll move straight into the last item for the Budget Committee, and that is a budget expansion. I don't think I have a slide for that one, but it is a budget expansion for fiscal year 2022 for the Daddy's Creek Bridge in Catoosa Wildlife Management Area. This is a major bridge on a heavily used road that for some time has been in desperate need of repair. We're fortunate to have some conversations with our fellow sister agency at TDOT, and TDOT has agreed to work with on this. This $202,000 that I'm asking you to expend the budget by will be wetlands dollars, as this is an enhancement to property owned by the state under the jurisdiction of the agency. And the $202,000 will be met with about a little over $800,000 of TDOT funds to redo and construct that bridge. With that, Mr. Chairman, we'd ask for approval of $202,000 budget expansion for the Daddy's Creek Bridge replacement.
And this bridge is access from one side of the WMA to the other.
Absolutely. If this is the only road that truly bisects the Catoosa Wildlife Management Area, and if it were to fail, it takes a long time to drive all the way around.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion to approve the budget expansion for the Daddy's Creek Bridge.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any more conversation? Questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission.
Mr. Chairman, that's all the budget committee's got today.
All righty, thank you, Chairman Cox. I think we're at the end of today's agenda, and I look forward to seeing everybody in the morning at 9 a.m. Thank you very much. We're adjourned.